let's kick off, and at the worst, anyone logging in a little bit late will miss out a description of the agenda, so it's not going to be the most exciting part of the meeting. So hopefully you can see my screen. No objections, I'll take that as yes.
Yes, all good.
So today we're going to have a bit of a look at the corporate scorecard, like we always do, look at the performance of the business. We're going to receive a debrief or an update from Steve about the recent WASA Annual Chair and MD Forum. Dan's going to give us a bit of a seasonal update about our outlook and preparedness for weather conditions that are going to come upon us. And of course, the most exciting and best part of the performance today will be the values recognition. So the corporate scorecard, we're now into October data. The usual thing that happens with the scorecard is that in the early months of the financial year, it becomes, it's a hard map to read because the data isn't always there, or it's over a very short period. We're now coming into the second quarter of the financial year, and we're seeing data over a better set of numbers that give us a good indication of where we'll go for the year. And it's looking good. A flood of green is a great spot to be. It's where we'd love to be. A couple of the amber areas there in particular to just highlight, the capital program and the digital program. They're amber because of decisions that have been made in scheduling for the projects within those. Although works are continuing on those projects, they haven't proceeded to approval, so the money hasn't been spent. The good news in that area is that in the digital space, we now have Rob Mackay, our digital program director, on board. He's looking at that program. We had deferred or slowed down the delivery of SCADA and CRM. Now we have him in place. We are looking at bringing those things back online in a deliberate way to deliver them so that we get the best value for money and the best use of our resources in bringing them online. So I know work is happening in that space. In the capital area, we have just closed the tender and looking for approval to place our partners into the Tier 1 consultancy panel. So in that capital program space, yes, we've been working on those delivery of the projects, but we haven't been able to appoint because we've been looking for our partners in the Tier 1 consultancy. That all being resolved in the next few weeks with the board, we should be looking at that once again, spending the money, getting back on track towards delivery in that area. So those two areas are on the way. The staff engagement score remained this year, and that continues to be under review and consideration in the business to make sure that we do the things that will engage our staff and make sure that we're doing the things that will improve that score where we can. Just, I know it's been said before, but for everyone on the screen, for your awareness, with the corporate scorecard, you can find it on the intranet. If you find it through the intranet, you can click on those great big coloured buttons, the greens and the ambers, and you will get through to the data. So where there are 1 or 2 or 3 contributing data sets for that metric, you will be able to get in and have a look at the actual performance in those areas. Just remember, if you ever wanted to deep dive into it, that's the way to do it. Were there any questions or comments on the corporate scorecard? Luke?
Yeah, Brett, the staff engagement measure, is that correct? Or should that be red? I'm just looking at the target there and the results, and
I would need to dive deeper into that to see exactly why. So the amber is that we're at risk of not getting target by the end of the year. Whether or not we run another survey in that period and what that looks for the result,
okay.
or if there is more data than just that, if there's a weighted average of other metrics behind. I just don't have that to hand, Luke, but we can get back to you. The poor team would be the ones to know that in depth. Okay, no other questions. I'll hand over to Steve to talk about the WASA member meeting and chair and MD's forum.
Thanks, Brett. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to spend a few minutes just talking about this particular event that I was part of last week. And I think it's useful just, and the reason why I'm sharing it is just to kind of look a bit outside of our universe, the things that are on our plate, the things that we see as priorities in our business, and just see what's going on with other water utilities, not just in Victoria, but across Australia. So you may know that the Victorian Water Corp MDs and chairs get together quite often. So we're very mindful of what our neighbours are doing, but this is an annual event. It's a good way of seeing, what's going on in the West, what's happening up in Queensland, even Watercare in New Zealand with the water utility down there participate in this forum. So getting a sense of what are the priorities, strategic priorities, because these conversations between board chairs and MDs get that way, and just where a GBW's priorities sort of relative to those. And as you'll see, they line up really nicely. So there were sort of probably 4 areas that I wanted to just pull out for this next few minutes just to share. The first one, and this is probably the main game in town for water utilities, probably globally, is sort of getting a handle of what are the impacts of climate change. And I think as we understand more about it, it's manifesting in very different ways all the time. And so it's becoming quite challenging to sort of wrap our minds around, the weather's changing, the traditional weather patterns are looking quite different, and what does that mean for our water sources, water security? What does it mean for extreme events? And probably even just last weekend, we had a wonderful day here in Shep on Saturday, touch of summer, and then Sunday morning, those storms that came through that were short and sharp and wreaked a bit of havoc. So, all of those things have impacts on us, on our supply chain, on our customers, and trying to understand that and put some measures in place to manage going forwards is really what this bit is about. If you just click the next slide, Brett, there was a roadmap that WASA built. So WASA is the Water Services Association of Australia. So that's think of Vic Water, but at a national level. This is the roadmap that they built a couple of years ago, and they've since refreshed it. And those tiles, if you like, of the jigsaw are what they consider to be the areas that a water utility would be thinking or have plans in place to be able to manage and mitigate and adapt to climate change going forwards. And I think if you look at those, there are a lot of those in our space that we have covered. So, water efficiency, the resilience piece, understanding how resilient our systems and networks are. I think following the 2 flood events, we've got a good sense of where our vulnerabilities are. So turning those into strengths is a piece of work going forwards. The Indigenous values one, I think, is a really interesting one, and one that hopefully the whole sector can do a little bit more work on going forwards. If you consider that traditional owners manage the water resource in this country for more than 60,000 years very, very effectively, what can we learn from those management practices and then translate into our management practices. So that's probably an area that we can do a little bit more work going forwards. Customers and communities, of course, are a focal point for us in our normal day-to-day, but in this context, it's really engaging and understanding not just the impacts of climate variability and climate change on our customers, particularly our commercial and industrial customers, but what do they think the solutions are, and embedding that into our planning. And again, circular economy, which we've talked a lot about in these sorts of meetings. So I think there's some nice alignment there with what the sort of the best practice roadmap looks like, the sorts of things that we're working on, and we'll dig into this a little bit more deeply to help prioritise our efforts around climate change. What I haven't included on this slide is net zero. There are a few other tiles that relate to net zero, and that's about renewable energy, of course. It's about opportunities for generating that through water corporation operations. Also, just the general strategies around carbon abatement that we have a pretty good handle on, certainly in terms of our large-scale solar project and the way that we're intending to use offsets. So I think the climate change and net zero space, there's a good test there that we seem to be moving in the right circles as far as the priorities in that particular area. The second one, Brett, if you just flick over to the next slide, is probably the next most important thing that occupies the minds of MDs and board chairs, and that's costs to run the business into the future, and the impacts of that on pricing, and how that might translate into price submissions. And many of you will know that we're a year and a bit into our current price submission, and it won't be too long before we start to think about the next price submission, which is due in July of 2028. But there was a quote that I threw up there, which I thought you guys might be interested in. WASA looked across the 20 largest utilities in Australia, so that's effectively the statewide utilities, and the ones that are a bit smaller than that, so wouldn't include us, of course, but the total capital spend across those 20 utilities in 2022-23, so sort of a year and a bit ago, was $6 billion, and that's projected to go to $15 billion just in 3 years. So 2.5 times the amount required, or the expenditure required on capital. That's for renewals, that's for growth, those sorts of things. That's a significant sort of vertical uplift in costs. A lot of that's been put down to the fact that assets are coming to the end of a lot of perhaps post two that hiring fuel. So that asset wave that had been talked about probably starting to show. And so just if you put the capital program significantly in this price period compared to the last one, as has most of the Victorian capital programs. So there's a lot of building going on. Al Tyson and his teams, he's got a task in front of him, and as does everyone else. And so delivering that amount of capital is one thing, but then it's also what does that then mean for pricing going forwards. And to that point, if you just click the slide again, Brett, what I thought was really interesting was New South Wales has sort of 3 major water corps: Sydney Water, Hunter Water, and Water New South Wales. They've just gone and put their price submissions into their economic regulator in the last month. So a bit of a milestone for them. You can go onto the website. So the bottom left corner there, there's a public website. You can go and read their price submission if you've got nothing to do or you're looking for a way to fall asleep quickly. But where I've just put that arrow is what their proposed price path is. And some of you may know we were down at the sort of 2 and a bit percent, roughly on average, slightly more than that over the 5 years. Sydney Water, which is 5 million customers in New South Wales, are asking for 18% in year 1 and then 7% in years 2 to 5. And I think all of the MDs and chairs that were not part of the New South Wales water sector, Al Jaws Drummond, saw that they had submitted price submissions like that. Now, that's not to say that they have been approved, and we all wait with bated breath to see what the economic regulator in New South Wales does with those price submissions. But, you know, that's a phenomenal impact on customer bills to pay for this capital uplift, but then also just the general cost of doing business. You know, we're very sensitive around bill shock in orders of magnitude less than that, but yeah, 18% in next year and then 7% each year plus CPI is a significant increase in customer bills in that state. And you know, if it ends up getting through the economic regulator and approved by the state government, you'll see, you know, very different pricing strategies between neighbouring states, and I think that sets up really interestingly as well going forward. So thought folks might be interested in that. Just to finish off, the third dot point is the next slide. First Nations Water Quality Improvement Program. That's been something that has been occurring at a national scale, driven by the federal government, probably for a good 15 or 20 years now. And the intent there is a lot of the remote traditional owner communities in WA, South Australia and Northern Territory don't have particularly good water and wastewater services and infrastructure. Part of that is because a lot of those towns, the populations are transient, so they'll move around, and so it's difficult to maintain the infrastructure year round in a lot of places, and a lot of other challenges as well. But the federal government 2 years ago invested 300 million into something called Closing the Water for People and Communities Gap, and that's really trying to bring the standard of water supply in those remote communities to an equivalent level of what you would see in a town that we live in. And that's had some wonderful success that was reported on at the Chairs and MDs Forum. And I think probably the relationship or the spin out there for us is some of the technologies that are being developed for use in those remote locations may well be of interest to us in some of our applications, or for emergency use or that type of thing. So I think that was a good update as well. And then just finally, a bit of administration for the rest of the forum, which was the announcement of the new WASA board members, quite a few Victorians there on that list: Cam Fitzgerald, Southern Rural, Marie Lang, of course, Greater Western Water, and Dave Ryan, who's at SA Water but used to be City West. So yeah, I think the WASA board is that will commence next year, and I know that the AWA board has just changed, and a couple of others as well. So yeah, anyway, that's it, and hopefully there were a couple of things in there of interest. Happy to take any questions or wait to the end. Back to you, Brent.
Thanks, Steve. Next, feel free to put your hand up. Of course, if you've got a question, or put it in the chat. There'll also be some space at the end of the meeting to chope up. Next, Dan is going to talk about the peak season outlook.
Sure, I can do that. Yeah, I'm not going to cover everything because this is a big topic for us, I suppose. And apologies, I am out and about in the ute, so it would be a bit on and off, but hopefully it goes okay. But I thought I would mainly talk about our water resource position, so focusing on water treatment. So firstly, I'll talk about where we're at in terms of our water resources heading into summer, and then I'll flick over and have a chat about the water quality and some of the challenges we're predicting in that space this summer. So if you just click through, Brett, in terms of our water resources, so on our, I suppose, regulated front, so, you know, the water that's supplied under our bulk entitlement, looking good. So on the Goulburn system, we do have 100% allocation, and we also have 100% allocation for next year as well. So in terms of those towns that are supplied off the Goulburn. No risk there in the, I suppose, short to medium term of any type of restrictions or any stress associated with the supply of water. Murray system's at 95 at the moment. It may have even shifted in the last couple of days, but it will get to 100%. It's just it's a bit of a different system, so they tend to gradually increase that one. We will get to 100% this year, and we won't kind of know what next year is going to look like until early next year. But we have quite a lot of options up our sleeve. So obviously we've got good allocation in the Goulburn. If that was to shift on us in the Murray system, we can take an opportunity to transfer some of that across to the Murray, but we can also, we could also sell some in the Goulburn temporarily and buy some in the Murray temporarily. So I suppose the summary of all that is all of the towns in the north solid in terms of water resource for the next 2 years really. Our storages in the south are in good shape as well. So this is just some data that I pulled out. So this was as of last Friday. The two we tend to focus on are sort of Kilmore and Euroa. People might remember back in 2019, we were on stage 2 restrictions in both of those areas. But as you can see there, the Sunday Creek system, which is our largest storage for Kilmore, is at essentially 100%. It's at 99%. So, we are looking good there. So again, the forecast for that system is no water resource shortages for this summer at least, but also looking good for next year. Similar with Euroa, I think is at 93, which is good. So right now we're holding quite a lot more water than we were heading into the 2019 summer when we had to pull the trigger on restrictions late in the season. So again, from a water resource or water supply outlook perspective, we're looking pretty good. So in terms of our preparedness for water resources, it's really not a lot to see here for this summer, but knowing that we do have, our teams within the planning function and also the likes of, Stewie Harris and the like, looking at the longer term forecast. How do we manage our current allocations and carryover? What do we sell? What do we carry? We are constantly looking at that, but that box would be green for us at the moment. In terms of water quality, if you click, Brett, there's a few risk factors that are on us at the moment that we know about. So the first one is we've had previous wet years, which you're all aware of. We've had flooding, we've had lots of rain within the catchments. Now, what that's done is that's meant we're currently carrying a high nutrient load, both within the catchments, but also within the storages. So you just click, Brett. That combined with right now, there is a prediction of a warmer than average summer. Now, potential for a wetter than average, but still predicting warmer than average, right? So we're probably more focused on the warmer at this point. The wetter is likely to come in the form of storms. So again, that's another risk factor for us where it can flush things into the river. Yeah. So just one more click, Brett. So that as well, we've also got some early data from our large storages. So out of Hume particularly, it's been showing it all year, but the data tells us there's high nutrients and algae already within that storage. So essentially what that means, if you click, Brett, is that we've got a very high likelihood of BGA this year, which will result in some sort of treatment and taste and odor challenges. That's our world this summer, we think, with all of the risk factors that I just spoke about, our experience and what we're predicting. And we have already seen some of that. So we've seen geosmin and MIB, which is a taste and odor compound. We have seen that in Euroa and Longwood this year already. That's in an area we haven't really seen that before. So again, this ties into that climate change challenge of seeing raw water quality changing on us. So we've seen that, and we already know that there are towns and catchments. Nilakudi has already had a BGA outbreak this year, so it's very likely we're going to see another season of BGA. So if you just click, Brett. So what are we doing about it? So the water treatment, for those who don't know, the kind of newly formed water treatment function, they meet weekly on Tuesday mornings as a whole team. And they talk about all different topics, but essentially over the last little while, they've been talking about all things summer preparedness. Steve Newham did a very good presentation on BGA, essentially a much more detailed version of my risk factors and what it all means and what we can do. And if you keep clicking, Brett, that includes BGA monitoring. So for those who don't know, we monitor for BGA year round, which gives us that early indication of what's going on within those storages. And that combined with the risk factors meant that a while ago, actually, the water treatment team, combined with the advice from the water quality team, implemented our pre-dosing within our storages. So that was some work we did out of the 2019 BGA blooms we had, so we can pre-dose into a lot of our raw water storages to drop out some of that BGA. And we have a lot of our powder activated carbon systems already online. So essentially they're there to help us with toxin removal, but also taste and odor compound removal. So they are up and running heading into this summer. And the final one, Brett, is that this isn't our first rodeo with BGA and taste and odor. Our water quality team, our water treatment team are very good at this stuff. They know that we're heading into summer and that we're likely to experience BGA and taste and odor compounds. And they know how to respond and react to that. And we're in a much better place than we were 5 years ago when we had significant BGA outbreaks. We've got more options available to us with the pre-dosing and the pack systems. So I suppose the moral of the story here with water quality is that the catchments and the storages are prepped. We're likely to see some BGA and taste and odor challenges this summer, but we're pretty prepared. And no doubt we'll face some challenges. There'll be things that come from left field, like the Aroa system that experience some taste and odor compounds. But, leaning on that internal capability, our team was able to mobilise a powder activated carbon system to get the dosing happening, and that now is stable. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But part of that feeds into, that significant uplift that you're seeing in others around that CapEx spending that, we're likely to have to install permanent assets at some of these sites where we didn't think we were going to have to historically. So that's something we're considering as part of our planning now. But that's a bit of how we're looking for the summer 101. As always, reach out to myself or the water quality team or anyone in service delivery if you're interested to know more. Always more than happy to talk about this stuff. But I'll leave it there, Brett, and we can crack on. Yep.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks to all your team that are doing an awful lot behind the scene to keep water safe and to keep an eye on the raw water we need to produce our product. So the last part of today looks at our values recognition. So just reminding everyone, we introduced our refreshed values at the Star Awards this year. Cause no harm, one team, value every dollar, encourage ideas, own our actions and strive to improve. I don't know whether we've named our friends yet, but that might be a challenge for the organisation going forward. They've all got friendly faces, which is lovely. A reminder to everyone, if you see someone doing the right thing, demonstrating a value just in their normal everyday job or something that they're extra that they're doing, please put on their behalf, put your hand up for recognition. There are the jars around in every team that will lead into your team meeting discussions, but also let your GM know so that it can be brought forward to this forum to be part of the recognitions. So I'll hand over to Steve to talk about the values recognitions for this month.
Thanks, Brett. Yeah, I can see myself in a couple of those, so got down the path of naming them. Yeah, there's 2 this month, which is great, and yeah, good introduction, Brett. I think the sort of looking more closely at these values as you do and we become more familiar with them, those areas, those things that we are saying are important to us about how we work, from cause no harm on the left, right, the way through to strive to improve. They're really easy concepts to understand. They apply in virtually all situations of what we do. So it's great to see the nominations coming through, and yeah, I'm always privileged to get the opportunity to talk to them each month. But if you flick over to the next slide, Brett, I'll go to the first one, and this kind of sort of picks up a little bit from what has a relationship to what Dan's talking about in terms of our summer outlook. I've seen that in the other months as well, but really this month the recognition is for both CSC and in operations, the folks that are doing the 24/7, 7 days a week, being sort of on call, if you like, the first line whenever something goes a little bit awry or requires us to respond. And you know, there's lots and lots of examples of this day in and day out. Going into the season that we're going into, they're likely to tick up a little bit, but all of the folks that are taking those calls, understanding those problems, helping to diagnose solutions, transitioning that into our teams to do repairs. You know, that's a very efficient and professional and seamless process that just goes on. And I think it's really important to stop and recognise all of the effort that goes into that. I mean, even just last weekend with the Sunday morning came and went probably before most people woke up, but that in itself drove a lot of this activity for the on-call teams to respond, and that's just amazing. And you know, I really appreciate the work that's done in that space, and I think a very worthy recognition of the one team. You know, folks that are working together to get our services back online for our customers. So congratulations to everyone in that world. It's a very, very long list. You know who you are, as we do, but yeah, I wanted to say thanks very much, and I think a very good values nomination for this month. Moving on to the second one, Brett, for something slightly different. This is a project that's looked at transitioning JSEAs, which is the part of the job planning process, in the interests of safe work, into Formstack. And again, very much a team effort, a lot of communication, collaboration, conversation that was done at a pretty rapid pace to be able to deliver a solution here. This is a fantastic example of an initiative that will enable the business to be much more efficient, to be much more effective in safe job planning, and capturing the data and all of those sort of things. And I think if we look at the team there of Cliff, Kim, Rachel that have really driven this, the examples of one team encourage ideas and strive to improve. I think they are excellent call outs of our list of values in terms of the work that has gone on to transition the JSEAs to Formstack. So well done. Again, at the outset might seem as though a pretty straightforward thing to do, but then as soon as you start to pick these things apart and see all of the tentacles that connect to everything else and all of the consultation and engagement that's required to make these things happen in our business, you know, there is an awful lot, I know, that's required. And so to have this particular solution achieved and to have done it in a way that does really demonstrate those three values, and probably others as well, I think is fantastic and a great call out. So well done to Cliff, Kim and the two Rachels. That's fantastic work. And yeah, we look forward to reaping the benefits of that and then the next one. Very good. Thanks, Brent. I think that is our values list for this month, and I'll hand back to you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Thank you, Dan and Steve, for some really informative and relevant discussions for us all. Congratulations to the CC and on-call team, and to the project team looking at the JC to FormStack project for really, really good work that we all appreciate. So, and Dan's put a shout out to Finn also, who's led this and gone about getting this new initiative delivered for the FormStack project there. We've got a little bit of time up our sleeve, but I'm just as happy to take questions or to hand your time back to your day. So I'll pause, and if anyone has any comments or questions, please speak up. Luke?
Brett, I just wondered if there's anyone online that could give us a bit of an update on the enterprise agreement, where it's at, the status of it currently.
I'm not sure if there's anyone on screen that wants to put their hand up to answer that. I know that we're at the stage that DECA are looking at the agreement and with the union for agreement to the final stages. So I believe that is getting close. If there's no one that can contribute, thanks Duncan, you've confirmed that we're waiting on a DECA response. If there's no one else that can respond online, we'll make sure that something goes up. It's probably relevant to put an update on the intranet at some point, just to let people know. But it is moving forward and in final stages.
Yeah, so you're right, Brett. It is still sitting at DECA at the moment, so we're just waiting on that to come back.
Thanks, Sam.
So the process moving forward, I guess, is DECA's taken what, 4 months or something now to have a look at this stuff, and then it comes back to us, and then where does it go to from there, Sam? Back to Treasury, does it?
So when it goes to DECA, it goes to Treasury and Finance and IRV at the same time as well. So it's actually, there's the 3 departments that it goes through once it goes there. So that's the costing part of it. And then it comes back to us, and then we have to submit the actual document. Once that's done, it comes back for us to vote. Once it's voted on, and depending on the outcome of the vote, it will then go to Fair Work. So there's still a bit of process to go through, but at the moment we're still waiting on the costings to come back from those 3 departments.
So if were there any other comments or questions from the screens? No, thank you everyone for attending today. Thank you to the presenters for their contribution. For those that didn't attend, the recording will be published like it normally is. And let's call it to a close. Thank you all.
Thanks, Brett.